We're in the city. I'm not going to touch the clutch at all. Tells you how well or strong the mid-range is. And I'm going to come to a stop. I've not even gone down the gears. Let's see what happens. Speed breaker. Did it stall? No. But yeah, this is the message you get. That please go down the gears, which you can. I've still not touched the clutch. I'm literally going to come to a stop. No clutch. The bike is still on. How cool is that? Now let's see if we can move. So now to move, see, the bike will only start moving once I reach 2700 RPM. Before that, the centrifugal clutch will not engage. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome on board the most anticipated BMW F450GS. This is the trophy edition, a motorcycle that I have been looking forward to ride ever since BMW dropped the concept a couple of years ago, and that was already insane. But what was even more impressive is when the near production model, this model right here, was showcased, and I could not believe it. Because at least me personally, I've never really seen any concept come so close to the final production model. So kudos to BMW for doing that. And man, that's just the tip of the iceberg, because look at it. There's so many things to talk about. So first and foremost, let's get the subjective thing out of the way, which is the way it looks. I personally think it looks fantastic. I think this is perhaps the best scaled down version of a bigger bike. This looks very, very similar to the R1300GS, obviously, because most of the design elements are taken straight from that bike, but still looks really proportionate, looks a proper GS, and looks really high quality. It has that BMW factor in all the componentry, in all the parts. This beauty is not skin deep. Everything about this is so darn impressive. So let's go to the engine, the much talked about Parallel 12 420cc engine, which pumps out an incredible 48 horsepower, 43 Newton meter of torque, while still weighing only 178 kgs wet. In whatever 12 years of journalism that I have done, automotive journalism, I haven't come across these figures, this power to weight ratio, this power to torque ratio. And when I first read the spec sheet, I almost could not believe it. But yeah, BMW have delivered, and how. The engine is lovely. It has really good grunt. The low end is okay, but the mid-range is really strong. So of the 43 Newton meters, 35 Newton meters kick in as low as 3000 RPM. That's when the engine really wakes up and you really get the kick around 6000 RPM. The highlight of this motorcycle is just the wide power band that it has. Makes it so easy to ride. And even when you have such good roads, it is more than happy to play ball. Such a fun engine, so much poke. And now looks like we have finally hit the first set of corners. Immediately, I love how neutral the handling is. Very quick on its feet due to a short wheelbase, but also at the same time feels really sure-footed. Look at that, wow. So really quick change of direction. It's just that at the edge, at the very edge, I feel it lacks a little bit of feedback. Even in terms of braking, I feel the brakes are quite potent, but it's the tires which are holding them back, which are preventing you from putting all the... Yeah, can you hear them squealing? Yeah. The tires are holding you back from putting all that stopping power down. They don't really have the outright grip. Wow. It screeches really loud. So yeah, I think with better tires, you can eke out even more performance. And I also really love the suspension. So even when now you're pushing it into corners, this road is far from perfect, but the bike is really poised, really balanced, even under hard braking. Even when you tip the bike over, it holds this line. The suspension, I think, is definitely one of the highlights of this bike. You have KYB forks at the front, KYB suspension overall. This is the top spec variant, which means you also get adjustability. So you have compression and rebound at the front. Preload's not adjustable for the forks. At the back, you have preload and rebound. I think it strikes a really good balance between the suppleness which you need on really bad roads. It's only the hard-edged potholes which really get through, which transfer onto your seat. Otherwise, it does a really good job of completely absorbing all of these undulations. And at the same time, when you really start pushing the bike, it also gives you the support that you require to make the most of this engine. This engine's a riot. Just watch it go. Whoopah! When you slow down, of course, we talk about tractability, and that is now a given, especially on this trophy edition, which now gets BMW's new easy ride clutch. And I think it's a fascinating concept. The main reason why BMW have done it is take into account the main target audience, which are a lot of new guys who are looking at adventure motorcycles, or people who are essentially looking at the GS as a tourer, or even people who want to take this off-road. The fact that this motorcycle is very, very hard to stall, the fact that you can actually come to a stop in the first gear, or the second gear for that matter, and it will not stall, is incredible. And that's the whole point. It takes away the entire headache of using the clutch altogether. You only need to use the clutch to kickstart the motor, and thereafter, just using the bidirectional quick shifter and the throttle, the motorcycle works. So the centrifugal clutch engages after you have crossed the 2700 RPM threshold. So before that, the bike will not move. It's only when you are on the throttle in the first gear or second gear and you cross the 2700 RPM, that's when it will start going. It took me some time to get used to that, but later on, I have to admit, at least when we were riding around in the city in chocolate box traffic, it was lovely. The fact that you don't have to worry about the clutch at all. It reminds you of like the Africa Twin, you know, just like almost like a scooter. Just get on, just use the throttle and forget about using the clutch. The only place where I could fault the system is the fact that BMW, surprisingly, have not given this the hill hold control or even a handbrake of sorts. And that's crazy, because when you're on incline, and even when you're in the gear, unless you're covering your brake, the bike starts moving backwards. So that's the one thing which I definitely think is a miss by BMW. We unfortunately had very little time with this bike, so we could not take it off-road. I think off-road is where you will really find possibly the limits of the clutch. But then again, the beauty of this is you still have a clutch, which means you can still overpower the centrifugal easy ride clutch. You just have to, if you want to, like, let's say, pop the front over a log when you're riding in the dirt, you still have the clutch, which you can use to override the easy ride clutch, and you're good to go. So I think it's a pretty good balance. How well it works in the dirt, we'll have to wait and find out, but at least on the road, I think the positives outweigh the negatives that they have. But yeah, it definitely needs hill hold control. While we're on the topic, we might as well cover the other things like the tech, which is another highlight and the pretty strong point of any GS. This one is again loaded with tech. You get a 6-axis IMU, which means you get cornering ABS, you get traction control, you get a bidirectional quick shifter on the middle and the top variant. You get riding modes on the middle and top variant, which is a trophy edition, and the middle variant is called exclusive. I think you also get the Enduro Pro mode, which allows you to tweak the traction control and which also allows you to disengage the rear ABS. But talking about brakes, that's the one thing which I think is a surprising miss. I've always known and loved GSs because of their combined braking system, which makes their brakes so strong. And I love the fact that to really get the stopping done, all you have to do is pull on the front brake and you still get the bike stopped, because it's also engaging the rear. But on this bike, for whatever reason, BMW have given that feature a miss. So yeah, these brakes are not linked. There are no combi braking system on this motorcycle, which is kind of a bummer, because I feel yeah, when we were riding her, I think the brakes are pretty potent. You still have a 300 disc at the front, you get braided lines, but the outright stopping power is not quite there. And I think that's more down to the tires than the actual brakes. But the other things where the GS is scoring super high are the ergonomics. I'm 5'11", and I think the ergonomics on this are spot on. It's really slim between your legs, really compact, but at the same time, the rider's triangle is pretty much perfect. Even when I stood up and I was riding for a bit, I felt really good on the bike. I felt like it fit me like a glove. And whatever little riding we have done over the past couple of hours, I think it's been spot on. Really comfortable, the seats are really comfortable. So that's one thing which I've seen so many manufacturers screw up. But luckily BMW have nailed it to the T. Brownie points for me is the engine. I was not sure how it would do in terms of the heat, considering how high strung it is. But no, even in the searing going heat, 35, 36 degrees Celsius, the engine stayed really cool, man. Even in chock-a-block traffic, it was maximum I saw it go was around 97 degrees, and I could not believe it. So that's another welcome surprise to see this engine also do so well on the heat front. We'll of course love to spend some more time in Pune on this bike, ride longer and see how it does, ride it off-road first and second gear to see how it does on the heat front, but at least right now I have very little to complain about. You have 180 mm of travel at the front and the back. That compounded by the 1917 wheel setup means that you also have 220 mm of ground clearance, which is enough and more for any of your touring needs, and for that matter even light off-road. I have to say light because that was the whole aim of the GS. They did not want to go all in and make a proper off-road focused motorcycle, as much as we would want BMW to do that. There are not many takers. Most people who buy these motorcycles are primarily tourers, and that's why not only do you have a 19-inch front, you also don't get the cross-spoke wheels. Even on the Trophy Edition as standard, you will have to purchase them as an accessory. So yeah, at least on the road, this has been super impressive. But this has been a very short ride. I cannot wait to spend more time on this machine, to definitely take this on the highway, because that's another thing that we have not been able to do, and see how it does on the open highway. Also in terms of buffeting, because we have not been able to go fast enough to see how this windscreen does, because that's one aspect which is going to be very crucial, especially when you go touring on this machine. Also how well, what kind of stability you have at the higher speeds, and yeah, how does the engine feel, because vibration wise I think they've also done a pretty good job. You can feel the vibrations kick in around 7,000 RPM, which is close to its ceiling. But below that, I think they've done a pretty good job of keeping the vibes to a minimum. Yeah, now 7,000 RPM, you start feeling them first on the pegs, then on the handlebar, and then on the rest of the body. But honestly, I have a feeling that in the higher gears, even the little bit of buzz that we feel will lose its sting, as is always the case with most motorcycles. I cannot wait to ride this on a highway, on an open stretch, to see if that is truly the case. First impressions of the GS are very impressive indeed. Cannot wait to spend more time on it. So as I start to summarize, it's very important that I hold up this placard that I won't even call this a first ride review. It's more like a first impression, considering how little time we got with the 450GS. And that's why I'm blown with how big an impression it has made on us, even with such little time. Now don't get me wrong, it is clearly not perfect. It definitely has some flaws, glaring flaws in the omission of a handbrake or hill hold control, which BMW introduced us to, which definitely is needed to stop the bike from rolling, especially when you're inclined. I really find the easy ride clutch to be quite helpful in the city, especially when you're riding around in the city in chock-a-block traffic. That's one less thing to do, but I'm not quite sure how I'll find it when I go off-road. a place where I'm yet to take this motorcycle considering how little time that we had. So that's a big aspect which is still missing in this review. And yeah, the last part, I was a little bit disappointed that even this top of the line trophy edition doesn't come with the signature cross-spoke wheels which we are so used to. But what they have done really well is the pricing. So the base variant of this will put you back by all of just 4.7 lakhs. Then you have the middle variant, the exclusive variant, which gets most of the electronic aids that you have on here, other than the easy ride clutch. That is for 5 lakhs, and then the top variant is going to put you back by 5.3 lakhs. Now, I think personally this is very competitive pricing, and the reasoning behind that is the only motorcycle that you can really compare this with, considering it's a parallel twin and the kind of power it makes, is the Aprilia RS457. And as of today, the Aprilia RS457, which is like a sportier bike, puts you back by 4.3 lakhs. Now, if Aprilia were to launch the Touareg, that would definitely be in the same ballpark between 4.8 to 5 lakhs. So considering that this is the GS, and yeah, that's the most important thing to remember here, that this is definitely the GS that all of us have been waiting for, because the 310 GS, I'm sorry, it was nowhere close to this mark. It did not really, in my books, even fully live up to the BMW batch, where this one looks like a pakka BMW, a pakka GS. Looks absolutely fantastic. It's super light, it's tricked out to the T with electronics, and has a lot of new features in terms of the easy ride clutch, which is going to make life for people who are new to adventure motorcycling, new to going off-road, or even people looking for the perfect tourer. Yeah, makes a really strong case. But wait for it, hold on to your money, let me ride it extensively, spend some good time on it, clock some good miles on it, and more importantly, ride it off-road, and then come back to you with a solid verdict on the F450GS.